I must admit, I'm representing Darnell today because he's not coming. I can't do all of those things that have been listed. No, it's me. You know, people always ask me, they say, what do you do? What's your profession? And sometimes I'm rather, reluctant to say anything because people may think you bragging or something like that. But if you live 67 years, then there's a good possibility that you may, along the line, acquired some skills, And my mother started my brother and myself out on this journey of life by demanding that we go to the conservatory, so I was playing the piano. I started at 8, so that was kind of a wise move on her part. I think she had a plan. We went to a private Catholic school. That's a whole nother story. I think I mentioned it earlier today that I'm a former altar boy, and that's a lot of experience. But I was thinking, I think the name of the theme is The Challenges of Independent Filmmaking. Isn't that the headline of my discussion today? Doesn't it say that? Well, that's what it's supposed to be. And I just was thinking, I wanted to share with you, before I show any kind of moving pictures, before there were moving pictures, there were just pictures. You know what I mean? I mean, static pictures of a scene. And this particular picture, I guess it speaks for itself, but can anybody tell me where that might be? What country that might be in?
U.S.
Who said that?
Me.
Why did you say that?
I don't know.
What gave you that?
Slavery, yeah.
No, it's not during slavery.
Afterwards?
Yes. Somewhere between the 1920s and the 1930s. Yes?
Which was, those expositions that they used to do, the countries that had colonies, and they used to expose what richness and because people from the colonies were so different, it was they're just exposing what kind of other things was just like a zoo, for example.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you. I just want to share with you, this is a postcard actually, and it was in vogue in the United States to take pictures of lynchings. Put them on a postcard and send them to your friends, family, whatever. This man suffered tremendously. I know it's hard to look at. I saw these postcards as a child, and it had a profound effect on me. But what's interesting about this is who's the photographer and what was his motivation? I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and say that he was documenting what was going on. He was somehow able to disassociate himself with the event to the extent that he could hold the camera straight and give us this image that will live on in the minds of some of us here until you're dead. You see it. It inspired me. I think maybe I was 8, 9 years old when I saw it. My family's from Louisiana, and that's down on the Gulf. My mother and father grew up on opposite sides of the Mississippi. She was born in Donaldsonville. He was born in Darrow, Louisiana. He was a farm boy. He used to tell me he used to walk to school and with no shoes. I remember once I'm a basketball player and a basketball coach actually, and I said, I need $15 to buy myself a pair of, basketball shoes. And he looked at me and said, boy, $15 for a pair of gym shoes. I didn't have shoes when I walked to school. You know, it was kind of hard to reconcile that. You know, I'm the part of the baby boom, and so people before the war, before the Second World War, a lot of them were in an agrarian kind of like society. And so I grew up with my father with his country leanings and me as the city boy, you know, so there was some conflict there, you know. But anyway, I was very aware of some of the things that were going on in the United States. And I used to talk to my grandmother, and I would ask her about slavery, you know, because her mother-in-law actually was a slave. It sounds remarkable, but, you know, my great-great-grandmother, my great-grandmother was a slave. It's hard to imagine. And so I took a particular interest in history, images, you know, and I'm part of the first TV generation. I have seen more movies than everybody in this room put together. Let me tell you why. Because the programming was such that you got the news, you got a variety show like, would you like to be queen for a day, or something like that, or what, you know, or some soap, or Search for Tomorrow, As the World Turns, all of these different things, and old movies. That was the programming. It was convenient, you know. You set up a television station. What are you gonna do? Okay, we're gonna have something for the kids. We'll have something for. We need to know what's going on in the world, and wow, we'll show some old movies. You know, movies that perhaps no one would have ever seen had it not been for the advent of television. So, I became an avid film fan. And I like documentaries. To really be honest with you, I like the feature films, but I really like these documentaries because it brought me outside of the confines of the United States, perhaps, or maybe there were some documentaries that dealt with things internal to the United States, but it gave me the opportunity to dream and to wonder and to observe. I could go on, but I want to show you a couple of films. We'll leave this for a minute. And I'm also a journalist. Was that in the description? Yeah, I don't know. So I had a project that I wanted to try to sell to the news stations. I wanted to get some support because I was in an airport. I forget where I was. London, I don't know where I was. And I'm sitting there, and as a filmmaker, as a documentary maker, a filmer, you're always listening, to people's conversations. I'm always eavesdropping. There was a friend of mine, he said I was the only person he knew could have a conversation on one end of the room and listen to another conversation on the other end. So you have to be careful, So I was in the airport, and I heard this conversation, and these people had just come from somewhere. It was a joint trip. I think they were coming from Mexico. And I was going to Detroit, and I recognized that we had the same destination, and there was a delay in the flight. And so anyway, I engaged them, and I talked with them, and I found them very interesting. So I asked them, they had a meeting. Several men would get together and discuss different issues, just to get together, what have you, once a month. And it just so happened that I was timely because they were going to have this meeting, and I would be in Detroit. So this is, let me see. This is it. So that was the game. And, it's interesting as a documentary filmmaker to literally invade the space of other people and just be an observer. The idea behind that trailer was perhaps to get people to be interested in supporting, a film that would go into, the black community and really delve into the questions that confront that community and their goals and aspirations. The next thing is, which I forgot, I'm not going in any kind of sequence here, but there's a reason, I guess the most poignant reason, the most significant reason why I'm a filmmaker today is because of my uncle. And there are not many people, in America. Well, there's a representative number of people who had Super 8 cameras. Not everybody could, because the whole process of developing can be a pretty costly endeavor, undertaking. But my uncle bought a Super 8 camera because his brother-in-law was in the Navy, and he would come periodically to Detroit and show the films. All the places. I saw Rome and Berlin, and I saw maybe some places in the South. I saw all of this through the films of my uncle's brother-in-law. And so finally he went and bought a camera. And luckily, my uncle has passed, but luckily somebody digitized that Super 8 film, And so one day I decided that I would do something with it. It actually was for we had a 4th of July program here at the ICD, and I put something together, and it's called A Sense of Belonging. It's a really short thing. So you'll get a view into how I grew up in my family. Let me see. I think it's about an hour and a half of material, and it's a small window into the lives of people in a certain period of time, 50s and 60s. I grew up in Detroit, and I come from a middle-class background. There was plenty of everything in abundance. Can I say that? Plenty of everything in abundance? So, yes, of course. Motor City, everybody had a car, 2 cars, 3 cars, a TV in every room, even in the bathroom, so it was plenty of everything, America had won the war and had taken advantage of it, and everything was in, as the Germans would say, Aufschwung, Aufschwung in English. Everything was on its way up. Okay, now, I'm going to I did a movie, and we're going to watch a little bit of it. What time we got? Yeah, because I want to leave a little time for just a couple of questions. It's called The Other Americans. And in fact, I had a movie at the Berlinale, my first movie. It's called Street of Dreams. And being a beginner, I didn't know the significance of that. It was also at the Edinburgh Film Festival, at the Cork Film Festival. My first film, not the one I'm going to show you now. There's the first one was in 1993, and I did The Other Americans in 2010. And I just want to share a few things with you. Because what we're talking about here, the challenges of independent filmmaking. And the best way to start a discussion is to, I guess, look at some of the current work, and maybe you'll have some questions. So, when I interviewed the homeless people, you're in a situation where you come on a few people who live in the street, who don't know where their next meal is coming from, who don't have the kind of perspective that people with a job, a house, family would have. I felt so bad after I interviewed them. I actually felt bad leaving them. It was such a strange feeling. Here I've just sucked them dry, literally. I mean, it's amazing when You know, when you give people an opportunity to express themselves, what comes out? You know, sometimes you have to ask a question, but generally speaking, most people have something to say. They have something to express, especially if they're oppressed, especially if they're downtrodden, especially if they don't have a perspective. And yeah. So I was asked yesterday, what was the topic of my discussion? And it's like the challenges of independent filmmaking. And as I said before, I'm a documentary filmmaker. And it's, number one, you know, looking at a situation, appreciating the situation, identifying with the people that you're interviewing, and letting them speak, letting them express themselves, and at the same time, presenting a forum, you know, in the context of a film that will convey that. There are a lot of, you know, somebody has this camera. Is this woman in here? I forget. Somebody has a little small camera, film camera. Right. Yeah, that one right there. Could you pass that up? Just pass it to me. Just pass it up. Pass it to me. Thank you. We don't have much time because I'm going to open. Anybody got any questions? I would say one statement here. This little device right here. This is a JVC. Yeah, on a chip, right? You know, this is a revolutionary device. Believe it or not, there are cameras similar to this one that people use in big feature films. Well, they process it or whatever. But we have a lot of power here, you know. I saw a movie from Coppola where he talked about, it was the making of Apocalypse Now. And at the end of the movie, he talked about, at that point it was just tape, but he talked about the video 8 tapes and the digital tapes. He said, you know, now everybody's got the power to make a film, you know, or to document things. It's a very important device. It's almost, you could almost liken it to the wheel, you know, in the sense that we are able now to capture images, you know, view them instantaneously, process them, and distribute them all over the world in the bat of an eyelash. It's remarkable. Thank you. So anybody got any questions? Yes.
Hi, I'm Amy. I was just wondering that for you as a filmmaker and an activist, what's it like living in Germany during the civil rights movement that's going on now in the United States, in Ferguson and elsewhere?
Well, I went to the United States military in 1966, November the 18th. That's right in the middle of the civil rights movement. And also, there were other movements too, the women's movement, the movement against the Vietnam War, which was international, the Black liberation struggle, that struggle that spanned the entirety of Africa and Asia and other places, a lot of liberation struggles going on. So I experienced, as an activist, that before Ferguson. Ferguson is only an extension of what's been going on, you know, in the United States and other colonial powers. And for that matter, in Africa too. I mean, it's not just that white people oppress black people or yellow people or whatever. It's a certain group of people who do that with that certain mindset, which is devoid of color, you see. But to answer your question, how is it now? It's always painful to see people suffer. Now, I'm also in the anti-war movement, so I'm dealing with these problems on a daily basis. Even when I'm behind the camera, there's things going on in my mind, or there's things going on. I'm in several movies, Sir No Sir, which is the story, the untold story of GI resistance in the United States Army during the Vietnam War. Sir No Sir, if you want to note that. I'm also in a movie called Goodbye GI, which chronicles the withdrawal of troops from Heidelberg, the headquarters, closing down in Heidelberg just a couple of years ago. And I was also in a play called Born with the USA, you know, about living in Germany, you know, with the American armed forces here. Yeah, it's difficult, you know, like it is for everyone else. There are people who are affected, and all of us. You know, I don't draw any distinction or make any distinction between, you know, my discomfort or my engagement and that of the others. Questions?
How did you approach them?
Well, you have to engage them, of course. You know, I'm a Detroit guy, you know. Before I had a formal education, you know, I was on the streets, you know. I know how to approach people, but the main thing, they want to say something. You have to give them the opportunity, you know. And if they see, I mean, this guy's in a wheelchair, for instance, one of my favorite scenes, one of the most painful for me. And in fact, I was back a couple of years ago, and I was looking for these guys. I wanted to show them the movie. I couldn't find them, you know. I think, in the main, we are gregarious people. You know, we're people who like to communicate with one another. So I don't see that. I know what you're saying. I know exactly what you're saying. But these people are, for the most part, prepared to talk. Now, there was the woman who lived on the street. You notice how I had to keep asking her questions, you know. She was, you know, but I think that had a lot to do with her uneasiness in front of the camera, you know. But she kind of like just settled down. But then in a situation like that, then you kind of like prod them, you know, throw a couple of questions out, keep the conversation going. There's a certain art to that, but by and large, if you see a film where I'm interviewing people, I hardly ever say anything. And I'm always astounded how much material I have when I'm cutting. You know, wow, they said this and they said that. And the best interviews, from my point of view, are the ones where the interviewer doesn't say very much. Yeah, and I think it's not, I wouldn't say easy, but it's not as difficult as people might assume. Anyone else? Yes. Excuse me.
I would just like to say that we don't have tons of time, so
We got pounds, no tons. We got pounds of time. Ounces.
Well, my name is Radeshan and I'm from Nepal. Since you showed that handicap, and that took me back, because I became journalist not by desire, neither by passion, but by coincidence. When I was doing my MPhil thesis, I didn't find any literature because I did my thesis on Nepal, India. There is open border between Nepal and India, and then I wanted to find what the prospects there are and what the problems, which was quite challenging that time. And since I didn't find any literature, and I thought of doing my research visually, I went to civilians, to prime minister, diplomats, to politicians, analysts, kind of things. You know, I had an experience. Once I went to one of the diplomats, and then I got an appointment with him, and I asked him, could you please tell me something about open border? How this border has been that useful to the people living both the countries. In the beginning, he denied to answer me, and it was a bit frustrating. But still, I had taken the web at that handycam, and he was ignoring me. He was trying to be indifferent to me. I put the camera on that tripod, and then I said that even if you scold, please scold me on the camera. And then when I asked him that, he became so polite and he started being so formal and then answered me a lot. And from that, what I thought, if you have any weapon to fight against, or if you have any weapon that helps you get the things what you want to, it is camera, it is media. So that eventually took me to be a journalist. Simply I wanted to share that.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
I think there's one last question there.
Thank you very much. My name is Rezo.
You're so soft-spoken. Could you speak a little louder?
Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank you for the presentation and screening about the documentary things. I have only one question. I would like to know about the challenge you had when they produced these things. The documentary, only documentary challenge you had.
Well, You know, I did that film with my first 3-chip camera. And I had done films with 1-chip cameras, right? And actually, this is not HD, it's SD, you know? And some of the challenges revolve around equipment, you know, a good microphone. When I look at this movie, I'm amazed. This microphone here costs $1,000. I used a microphone. I got it for like $29. He's laughing. You know those microphones. I mean, the result. Technical things. Like, well, how am I going to capture this? What's happening? The first scene where the women are and the man is on the porch. I had the microphone, but I didn't know whether or not the battery was strong enough. So if the battery goes out, we can forget everything because we're not going to capture the sound. So that had a lot to do with not being prepared, and not getting those extra batteries and not thinking about it, But in the main, a lot of that revolves around logistics, Very little of it revolves around the players themselves, the people involved in the film. A lot of it has to do with logistics, has to do with money. But what I found is, if I have my own camera, now I have 3 cameras now, I can do a lot of different things that I could not do a few years ago, top quality. I mean, really brilliant pictures, brilliant sound, all those different things, that I've learned over the years. But even in imperfection, even if things are imperfect, there's a certain weight and value to that, It's also a question of form and content, The form can be sometimes lacking, but if the content is strong enough and you can grab your audience, that's a good indication, Challenges there again. Money. You know what I mean? Time. Dedication. These are the things that and not in any particular order. I wouldn't say money, because now for me, if I want to go shoot something now, I don't think about money. If I'm doing it myself, it's always a tedious task to do everything yourself. But if that's necessary, then you do that. If you have an idea and you want to accomplish it, then you go about doing that. But like in this room right now, there are a few people some of my colleagues, they like to do movies, and I know they're going to assist me next time I have a low budget or no budget film, But it's about dedication. It's about the idea. It's about the logistical aspects. It's about my first film before we leave, Street of Dreams. It's on VO. It's called Street of Dreams, and I remember I was talking to people. It was at the Cork Film Festival. Anybody familiar with the Cork Film Festival? She's from Ireland, And I told somebody, I said, yeah, my film was at the Cork Film Festival. They looked at me and, wow, yes. I didn't even know. In fact, when we were discussing the budget for that first film, I had the idea. And the guy who was the producer, he was going over the budget. We need this, we need that, we got to have a driver, we got to have this, hotel, blah, 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 blah. Director. I said, well, who's the director? He said, you are. See, because I thought, making a movie, we would hire a director, which you could, but not on our budget. It was significant, but it would have been half the budget to hire a director. So then my film was screened at the Edinburgh Film Festival here at the Berlinale. I mean, my first film out, I won the Oscar in my opinion, just by virtue of the fact that it was shown to a broad audience of people, And, you know, here in Berlin and in Scotland and Ireland and in America, you know. So those are the, and then I learned that a lot of people get money for films and they never complete them. You know, that surprised me, you know, but we went in, my first film, it got some major exposure. Now, my film, Street of Dreams, was picked up by Jane Belfour Films, which was the biggest distributor of documentary films in the world. They went bankrupt. So, yeah, I was really excited about that. Not about the bankruptcy, but about being picked up by them, you know, which was an indication of what they thought about the film. And so I would say to any aspiring filmmakers, sound people, cameramen, or whatever, you know, just, you know, stay true to your dream, you know. And especially in today's world, in today's technological world, with all of the things that are available, you know, to us all, you know, we can do a lot of different things, alone and in concert with other people. And I would wish everyone here a great experience in filmmaking, or at least watching, or whatever role you have, investigating, writing the history of it. I'm looking at Oleg over here, is telling me this. I know this sign language. This, you know, in Polish, this means cut it off. Thank you very much.